Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. With 3-door CRA cleared, we have reached halfway through our goal of completing one of the first bossing milestones in Maplestory. With Chaos Bonbon, Queen and Pierre defeated, we got access to the real CRA gear, so once we upgrade them enough, we can replace the rental CRA equipment that was given to us for our Terror Burning support. In this part, we're going to try to take on the next few bosses after 3-door CRA. From a progression point of view, these upcoming bosses don't add much in terms of gear, but will provide us a solid amount of income if we can clear them consistently. The first boss I'm going to clear in this part is Hard Magnus. Hard Magnus, or HMAG, is the next hardest weekly boss after the 3-door bosses. Despite this though, HMAG is most likely the most hated boss in Maplestory due to the fact that he has so many layers of randomness. Depending on what he does, Magnus can create many occasions and situations where you don't have a proper way to play through his mechanics. Thankfully, they give us 15 lives for this boss to compensate, but this boss is extremely annoying to fight. The first thing that we need to talk about is his blue barrier. When you are outside the blue barrier, you will do less damage to him, while also taking damage over time in 10% max HP chunks. While you're also outside, your potions will have their effectiveness significantly decreased. Throughout the fight, you will want to try to stay inside the blue barrier for as long as possible. Whenever you bring Magnus down 25% of his HP, the barrier will slowly shrink, which forces you to fight closer and closer to him as the fight drags on. Across the whole fight, there will be meteors that rain throughout the sky. The green ones will do half your max HP, and the blue and purple ones will one-shot you. They come at random speeds, so there's no real way to predict them. Just try your best to weave in between them, and hope that a super speed one doesn't decide to land your head. On the sides of the room, there are these little gas pipes that will occasionally spray yellow gas in the area. If you touch the gas while it's up, it will stun you for 10 seconds. Because of this, you typically want to keep Magnus in the middle of the stage as best as you can. Magnus himself has many different mechanics. The first one is his dash. He will randomly decide to dash towards you, but when he does, he will always dash a set distance. Magnus will sometimes go up in the air and do one of two things. The first one is that he will cover himself with his wings and then blast the floor around him. The safe spot for this attack is right underneath him. If you get hit by the blast, it will do 100% of your HP. Otherwise, he will be holding his sword and be ready to slam the floor. You will have to stay away from the middle, otherwise it will do 100% of your HP. When Magnus creates a yellow halo above his head, he will create yellow halos that are randomly placed throughout the stage, which will blast yellow light underneath it. If you are too close to where it is when it blasts the light, it will do 100% of your HP. When he swings his sword upwards and creates a spiderweb behind him, he will either put a regular zombify debuff on you, which makes your potions half as effective, or he will put a web debuff on you. The web debuff causes you to be unable to flash jump, teleport, or use any other mobility skills. You can use Hero's Will or Will of Erda to debuff this status effect. The last Magnus mechanic is the worst one. It will glow blue and raise his sword, then spin. If you're caught by the spin, it will knock you back. This can be avoided with super stance, or by jumping high into the air when he spins. This boss is incredibly annoying to fight due to his randomness. He will do any of his mechanics in any order, and also potentially back to back. There isn't really much to say regarding this fight, other than to really practice your movement to avoid as much as you can. Once you reach the last 25%, it is very hard to avoid the spin attack while staying inside the barrier for a consistent amount of time. You'll be taking a lot of damage outside of the barrier, while also doing less damage to him because you'll be spending so much time trying to avoid the spin. Save your Bite and Burst for the last phase, and try your best to survive as much as you can. You might need to wait out your deaths, so then you have your burst up more consistently, but with 15 lives, hopefully this is enough to get you through the fight. I wish you all the best and good luck on Hard Magnus. Next up, we have the final CRA boss, Chaos Vellum. Chaos Vellum, or C-Vel, has much higher defense and HP compared to the rest of the CRA bosses, so get ready for a long fight. Thankfully though, compared to some of the other bosses we've fought up to this point, he is one of the fairer bosses mechanics wise. Throughout the fight, rocks will fall from the ceiling. They are marked on the ground where they will fall, and if you get hit by them, they will stun you for a short while. It's very important to dodge these the best you can because you might get hit by other mechanics while you are stunned. Vellum will spend most of his time underground in this fight. He will occasionally jump out of the ground, and you have to try to do as much damage as you can when he's up there. Where he will jump out is indicated by the yellow circles. You want to avoid these circles as best you can because there's a good chance that it can be his tail, which will one-shot you. Whenever it isn't his tail, Vellum will either come out short or come out tall. If he comes out short, he will knock you back if you are too close to him and do a good chunk of damage. If he comes up tall while you're in the circle, he will one-shot you. Every once in a while when he comes up tall, he will breathe 3 fireballs in front of him. Each of these fireballs will do 100% of your HP and you will need to stay up close to him. While you're playing up close to him, you have to try to do as much damage as you can while kiting the tails that will follow you during this part. Later on in the fight, every once in a while when he comes up short, he will stay up and spray poison across the map. This is another time that you have to try to get as much damage in as you can before he goes back underground. During this time, you will also need to make sure to kite the tails, which can be hard to see because of the poison on the floor. Once you pass the 50% HP mark, he will occasionally disappear and come up on either the far left or the far right side of the map. You will need to get to him as fast as possible as he will breathe fire across the whole stage, which will one-shot you. The only safe spot during this time is right up close to him, where you should be trying to do as much damage as you can to him. If you don't know which side he's going to come up from, if you wait a little bit when it says he's taking a deep breath, he will slowly pull you towards the side he's popped up from. The key to this fight is to try to maximize your damage in the small windows that Vellum stays above ground. Aim to avoid all the rocks and tails to conserve your lives as best you can while chipping away at his HP. At first it seems very slow, but as the fight drags on, Vellum will keep doing attacks that make him stay above the ground for longer, such as the full map attack, the poison, or the flame breath. The last boss I'm going to attempt to clear in this part is Chaos Papillatus, or CPAP. This boss is a bit of a combination between HMAG and C-Vel, where the mechanics between those two bosses come together into one big clock. This is the only boss in this part that might be part of gear progression, because he does drop an extremely rare eye accessory, which is the Papillatus mark. Once upgraded, it can be transferred onto a Sweetwater monocle, which becomes one of the best in slot items in the game. However, it is extremely rare, so I'm mostly focusing on doing the boss for money, but if it does drop a Pap mark at some time down the point, it would be extremely useful and I will probably use it as part of my progression. To start off, you will have to be careful of the claws on the ceiling. These claws will randomly drop down, and if you are in the way, they will grab you and lock you on the spot for a short while. Even though they don't do any damage, they are like the falling rocks in C-Vel, where if you do get stunned by them, you won't be able to move and you can get killed by his other mechanics. Throughout the fight, CPAP will spawn lasers, a red one on the left and a blue one on the right. They will have spinning lasers that, if they do touch each other, will do a full map attack that will one-shot you. You will have to know where and when to stand in different spots to stop the lasers. For this first laser positioning, it's very easy to block it on the right side by just standing in front of the laser. For this second laser pattern, you will have to quickly run and block it on the left side of this laser. For this last laser pattern, you have to be standing underneath the laser on the left side to stop it from touching the other one. When CPAP creates a blue clock in front of him, it will create 4 blue pools on the floor that will one-shot you. There are a few safe spots in this map. The easiest one to do is just to stand on the platforms throughout the map. Keep in mind though, when you do this, blocking lasers and avoiding claws can be a little bit awkward because typically you will have to be on the floor to block the laser, and the claws are usually blocked by the platform themselves when you're underneath them. There are also safe spots on the far left and far right of the stage. These aren't very good spots to stand in general because you won't be able to do damage to CPAP from the corners, or if he does come to you, you won't have a lot of space to move to avoid the other mechanics. One of the best spots to stand during this mechanic is right underneath where you originally dropped the item to start the fight. There's a little gap between the 2 pools on the floor, which is safe. The reason why this spot is so good is that it also covers 2 of the laser patterns that we talked about, where you can just stand in front of the laser or to the bottom left of it. When CPAP raises his hands and holds up 2 white clocks, it means he's about to spawn white clocks on the floor. These clocks will explode into a pillar of light after a short delay. These beams will one-shot you, and you have to keep moving throughout the fight to avoid them. This mechanic is likely going to be one of the ones that give most players a headache. CPAP will only create these clocks around you, and when you are close by to him. With this in mind, you have to know when you have to block the laser, and you have to try to play away from where you're going to have to stand. This way he won't spawn the clocks directly underneath you when you do need to block the laser. Every once in a while, he will clap his hands. He puts a number on top of your head and on top of his head. You will have to find and pick up clock drops throughout the map, which are dropped by the mobs to match the numbers between your head and his head. The mobs will only drop ×2 multipliers or half clocks. The goal here in this phase is to match the number between your head and his head. If either your number or his number hits 0, you will be either randomly stunned or skill locked for the difference between your heads. For example, if he's on 10 when you are on 0, you will get stunned for 10 seconds. The closer you are to his number, the lower the disruption will be. Ideally, you'll want to match the number as close as you can. Alternatively, if you are unable to get the number to match, when your number is lower than his and it's about to hit 0, you can use an iframe or Hero's Will to dodge the status effect. Every 2 minutes or so, he would stop attacking and start ringing on the spot. This is your window to do as much damage as you can and do as much of your burst as you can. He doesn't move and he won't do his other mechanics. During this part, he will drop small spinning cranks that do a bit of damage and slowly tick your health down. One thing you have to be mindful during this part of the fight is that your potions will have a cooldown, so do be careful and make sure to heal. Towards the end of the first phase, once you reach about the last 20% or so, he will occasionally go into hibernation and you won't be able to hit him. You will be required to play a short minigame, and the aim of this game is to make sure you clear as much of the clock in the middle as you can. The way you do this is if you press the up key on that big blue portal on the left platform, it will clear whatever slice the red arrow is on. You have to kill the little brown pom-poms that are laying around the map to get clocks that affect the middle clock. The blue clocks will shift the red arrow slightly clockwise, and the purple ones will move the red arrow much further. The 2-hour one moves the red arrow clockwise 1 slice, the 4-hour one moves it 2 slices clockwise, and the 9-hour one effectively moves it backwards 1.5 slices. You want to try your best to clear as much of the clock as you can, otherwise he will heal for the percentages that you didn't clear. In other words, if you have a lot of 100% sections on the clock that you didn't clear, he will just heal to 100%. Once you hit the second phase, you are pretty much going to clear the fight. There are some mechanics that you will have to watch out for, which can get you killed, but with enough caution, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with. The first one is that he will randomly teleport you throughout the map, which can get you killed if he happens to teleport you when you're trying to block the laser. If you can, save your iframes unless you really need to use it. In second phase, you probably need to use it if the lasers do end up touching each other because you got teleported. The other mechanic is the red clock on your head. After 10 seconds, it will blow up and doing about 90% of your health. You just need to make sure that you're fully healed before it pops, otherwise you might just lose some lives like I did. And with that, we pretty much cleared all the weekly bosses we can at this point. This is going to make some pretty good progress for us because the amount of money that we get from these weekly bosses will be so good and useful for our future upgrades. I won't go into too much detail about how I'm going to allocate my messes just yet, so I'll leave that for another episode. So just to recap what we've done so far, we've cleared 3-door CRA, so we do have permanent CRA gear. So once we can upgrade them, we can replace our temporary stuff. We also can clear all the way up to CPAP, so now we're making just underneath 800 mil every week from just our easy weeklies. Another update that I wanted to make, I didn't want to go into too much detail, was that I actually am starting to do hard lucks every single day, which is hard golics. I'll go into more detail about this boss in a future part as well, because I think that this ties in really nicely with our progression. Similarly, I've also started working on my side characters. For example, my first Terror Burning, I've decided to use it on a Luminous for its Link skill, and I'll be trying to push that character to 210. I've decided to start working on my Demon Avenger, and I've just been putting all the bonk potions, the extreme growth potions, onto that character to push it to 210 slowly but surely. Anyway guys, I think that is all for this part. It's a very short part because we just wanted to focus on just the bossing component, but hopefully you guys found this video interesting. In the next one, I'll give you guys a more thorough update on my character, and I'll go through some of the stuff that I did to improve my gear. Wherever you guys are in the world, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys have a wonderful day. And as always, take care. I'll see you guys in the next one.